Hey GenderqueerChat. Oh my god, amazing videos this week from the other contributors. I almost didn't make a video because I have really nothing to add or contribute on top of what everyone else has already said. Really great videos this week. If you haven't watched them, go back and watch Joe's, Jay's, Christina's and Ricky's videos, and anyone else who might have popped up in the time between me watching them and now. And check them out because they're really great videos and a really awesome topic that was presented by Joe. And if you haven't watched them yet, the topic this week is how would you basically present concepts of gender or genderqueer identities to a group of 14-ish year old kids. And that's a really a really great thing, and also it comes from a real life experience that Joe is having at the moment, because Joe has got the amazing opportunity to be able to go into a school and run workshops or seminars, whatever you want to call them, with I think grade 9, 14-year-old kids, and speak about gender and genderqueer and stuff, and that I am totally envious and in awe of Joe. That is a great thing to do, and I actually can't think of anything better to do than share the genderqueer love and help explain and explore gender with other people, especially people who may be a little bit younger and haven't encountered these things yet. And I wish when I was 14 years old somebody would have come into my school and tried to, open discussion about things like gender, because at that stage I really had no idea, and maybe life would have been a bit simpler if I had have found out. So yeah, fantastic opportunity for Joe, and Joe's video was totally amazing, detailed, well basically presented it to us as if presenting it to the school groups, and I think everything Joe had to say was entirely relevant and well explained, and just great. And Jay's video as well, and Christina's video, and Ricky all added amazing things, and so I don't really have much else to add but I wanted to make a video anyway to congratulate everyone and just say that that is really good. One of the things that Jay and Christina brought up was the concept of the genderbread person, and Joe had brought up the gender Gumby as well. And that's something, for me, the whole gender Gumby, gender bred person is a really useful tool, and I really enjoy it as a way of kind of an example of looking at gender in a different way, and I find that very thought-provoking. Like Ricky said, some people take issue with the whole gender Gumby kind of idea, the idea of taking male and female as binary options and plotting out the space in between. That doesn't work for everyone. It's not how everybody chooses to conceptualize gender. Some people may find that they don't find their gender or their non-gender, or how they see themselves represented on that particular spectrum, and that's completely valid, and I totally agree actually. But for me, it really, that was a huge turning point coming across the gender Gumby many years ago, actually on GenderqueerChat. I think it was Sam's video who presented the concept of the gender Gumby and this idea of there can be something else other than strictly male or female, and this was a light bulb moment for me. And until that point, of course, this is already what I was thinking about, and I was bouncing between the ideas, but I still had this ingrained pervasive notion of the gender binary and really one or the other mentality. So I was kind of stuck in that way of thinking. If you're not one, you must be the other, and it was black and white and pretty clear cut like that. So it wasn't until the gender Gumby came along and I saw that I realised, yeah, there is a different spot, in between, this grey area, however you want to conceptualise it. There's space for somebody to present and experience themselves and place themselves on, between these two binaries, between these two ideas that, my parents and everyone else have told me that is just the way it is. And that was amazing. The genderbread person takes that a few steps further as well and kind of refines it, I guess. And if you haven't looked at the website where that comes from, I think it's pronounced metrosexual. And I found that a few years ago as well, or maybe last year, or a couple of years ago. And the person who runs that is, pretty cool. And they are, as Christina said, doing a gender book, and I think some examples of that are up on the website. and you have the genderbread person as well, which keeps getting refined in different versions. And it's not the be-all and end-all, and it doesn't explain gender totally, and it doesn't work for everyone. But I think having something that is a visual, interactive in the sense that you can physically, get a marker and plot the point between blah and blah, I find that really useful. It was really useful for me. It helped me to really get into the mindset that there is that grey area, however you want to conceptualize it as, but there is something else other than male or female. It helped. It was the real first massive step that helped me to break down my binary way of thinking. And I think for anyone to truly understand gender in an honest way, like when we're talking about genders other than just male or female, for anyone to come to terms or start to really understand what genderqueer is, what non-binary is, even what transgender is, you need to really challenge and break down that really pervasive idea of the gender binary, which, as we know, is the backbone of our society, the way that we look at gender. And sometimes it's something as simple as seeing a little outline of a genderbread person on the page and having those lines with the where you get to get a pen and put that mark in. That can be really helpful. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is I really like the whole genderbread person thing. It's really helpful, and that's something that I would use to present to kids. Maybe it would be the way that I'd open a seminar or workshop and get people to plot out their own genders. I think it's a very non-threatening thing as well. It's kind of cutesy in a way, especially if you're talking about a genderbread person. I think that's very non-threatening. It is a way that you could hand out the pieces of paper, introduce the concept, explain it, explain the different levels of it, like birth, sex, gender, identity, gender expression, sexuality, whatever lines you would choose to put on that particular model, whatever points you're going to discuss. Introduce those concepts, and you could maybe do it yourself and show the kids where you place on that, as Joe said. And then you could hand out sheets of paper so people could do it privately and they wouldn't have to share, or they could share if they wanted to, and if they wanted to share but didn't necessarily want to talk about it, if they weren't confident in having that kind of conversation or dialogue or being that open, depending on the group and who's there and whatever, they may be able to use just the physical, the drawing and where they put it as their discussion point. But regardless of how that's used, I think that, at least for me, is a really... it's a powerful thing and delivers a powerful message and a really useful tool. I think anything interactive like that as well, something that forces you to step to the side a bit and look at something in a different way, and presents it in a different way, in this case like a visual, more interactive way. I think that's a really helpful thing. So yeah, I've talked about that for ages, but I'm a believer in the whole Gender Gumby kind of setup. So, and I haven't got an example of it, but if you want to go back and watch the other videos as well, they're all on there, or go to the it's pronounced metrosexual website and see the examples there, print them off, do them yourself, whatever you like. Yeah, so I don't really have anything else to add. I think it's important. It's a really important thing to have these kind of discussions and to have the experience of being able to talk to younger people in particular, or any age group, and is really important, because while back when I was 14, I really had no idea about any of this stuff. It had never been presented to me. No one had ever talked about it. There was never that. I never had those concepts, those ideas challenged. I think we kind of live in a different world these days, and maybe a 14-year-old going to school might be a little bit more open to these sort of ideas, even if it's just that sexuality is much more of an openly discussed kind of honest thing these days than maybe it was when I was a kid. And I was talking to my daughter, who was 14 up until a few days ago, about this particular topic, and we didn't get much of a chance to discuss how we would do it, but I think she more or less just said, be honest about it and open about it, not talk down to the people that you're presenting it to, regardless of age, but And also to understand that, you know, a 14-year-old is pretty savvy and a 14-year-old is pretty grown up and probably does have a hell of a lot of experience. And I think when you present anything to a group of people, you have to go into it thinking that they know nothing from the perspective of you need to know everything, so you can, or know as much as you can to be able to deliver what you need to deliver. But you also need to go in with the mindset that people have their own experiences, and I think, as Joe said as well, like maybe an introductory thing of, you know, getting people to put up their hands, who's male, who's female, who's something else, or however you'd do that. Like, you'd have to recognise that you could very well walk into a classroom situation or any group situation, and maybe there is somebody there who either outwardly or you know, not outwardly, identifies in a different way as other than male or female, as genderqueer, as gender variant, as gender fluid, as non-binary, as transgender, or whatever. So you need to appreciate and respect that there may be people in those group situations that already have some experience with it, their own understandings, their own views, and sometimes maybe misconceptions, sometimes prejudices. You might find that some people have, you know, this sort of stuff, talking about gender, sexuality, and presenting it might be a really a pretty difficult issue, and for some people it may push their buttons and contradict with their sense of reality, or maybe you know, if people are particularly religious, for instance, or certain cultural backgrounds, it may be a pretty difficult thing to hear. So I think it's important to go in honest and open. You're presenting the topic, but also to be mindful of the fact that what we're talking about, and like what we do on this channel, it's kind of confronting, and it's maybe not for everyone. And while it's very important to get it out there and have these discussions, and we think it's, you know, important and have these discussions, and we're quite happy to get on YouTube and talk about it. For other people, they may not be there yet, or they may not want to be there, or yeah, it may just be a sensitive issue for them. So I'd go in with that kind of mindset, and yeah, just talk about it. I'd ask the kids what they thought about it, what maybe their experiences had been already with gender. Do they know anyone who's transgender? Do they know anyone who's non-binary? Do they know anyone who's who identifies as genderqueer? Like the others have said as well, gender and sexuality are two separate things, and while that's very true, I don't think, for me personally, I don't think I'd like to present gender without sexuality as a component of it. I think I'd make those clear distinctions, first of all, the difference between birth sex, you know, sex and gender, and between sexuality, like take those things apart, show them as separate entities, explain and explore them as completely separate topics, because that's part of the misconception that a lot of people have about gender and genderqueer identities, is that they're somehow linked and intrinsically with sexuality, and that, you know, if you're, you know, not presenting in a way that is specific or deemed proper for your particular birth sex, then that must say something about sexuality, which definitely is not the case, but sometimes it is the case. But I wouldn't rule sexuality out of the equation at all. Like, I think those two things need to go somewhat hand in hand, like the LGBTQ community, gender diverse people, and different, you know, expressions of sexuality. That's kind of one community. I think it's handy to present it in that way as well. And the fact is, for me and for other people as well, you know, for some people, gender and sexuality do come hand in hand, in the sense that if you question one, if you unravel one, then you may inadvertently unravel and end up questioning the other as well. Anyway, I have to go, so go back, watch everyone's videos. They're all fantastic, and I'll see you next week.